I've been struggling a lot this past week. Rob and I had a good time celebrating his birthday, but in the following week, a lot of unexpected stuff happened. My mental health has not been very good. My mental health was not that good to begin with. I've been struggling a lot this past week. I didn't even know if I would want to do a video about this topic so soon, but I had an epiphany and now we're rolling with it. On March 16th, there was a mass shooting in Atlanta, and it appears to have been targeting Asian people specifically. Of the 8 people killed, 6 of them were Asian women. Normally when heinous acts like this happen, it brings racial issues to the forefront, but normally they're black people or indigenous people. That's why we have the acronym BIPOC. It's Black, Indigenous, or Person of Color. This time it was Asians, and this was very difficult for me personally. I'm not used to Asian issues being at the forefront of anything. Like, I've already done a video on anti-Asian racism. It's sort of like always in the background. It's stuff like, oh, people making fun of your name, as opposed to police beating you on the street. But since the pandemic, there's been a rise in anti-Asian racism, especially violent crimes, presumably because violent racists cannot distinguish the Chinese government from the Chinese people from Asian people in general. I'm not going to blame this racism on the media's criticism of the Chinese government, even though we live in Canada, which is known to be progressive, even though we have more anti-Asian hate crimes per Asian capita than the United States. Lots of people do not like China because they've detained the 2 Michaels for over 2 years now. And literally, in Metro Vancouver, there were physical altercations between pro-Hong Kong protesters and pro-Chinese government counter-protesters. These are all Chinese people from China. They're obviously not racist against Asian people. The problem is just that some people are racist and violent. These types of large hateful events can be very frustrating for people who are online, such as myself, until I stopped opening my Twitter. At the time of recording, I still haven't looked at it, and it's definitely been longer than the time in which I said I would return. What makes these types of times difficult is that people tend to say really stupid things. And I mean stupid things that are said online in general in the fandom, not the police saying that the killer had a bad day. You could say that it's people showing their true colors if you don't mind a certain subgroup of furries getting very angry at you. For me, the straw that broke the camel's back was a tweet by Adler the Eagle, where he addressed cultural appropriation of Asian culture by laughing at Asian companies who put improper English on their products. He approached a real discussion about racism, where people are actually trying to discuss things by trying to reductively associate bad product design with Asian culture. Yes, he did quote-unquote apologize, but all he took away from it was that it was poor timing. It was insensitive because of the murder spree and rising anti-Asian hate crimes. The people who defend this type of stuff are so predictable, and I know they don't care to listen. So this video is not for them, this video is for all of you. And I want to impart some knowledge on you so you can identify bullcrap more easily. Some of you may have heard of a rule of thumb called Hanlon's razor, which states, never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. But despite how often that razor gets thrown around in the fandom, I've never seen an instance where it was used correctly. I would like to introduce a rule of thumb that Rob told me. It's called don't be an asshole. I think there's this hyperfixation on the idea of whether something is discriminatory or not. What people don't realize, or at the very least they refuse to acknowledge, is that there are 2 axes here. There's the discrimination axis and the being an asshole axis. For example, if you tell an Asian Canadian that their English is good, even though it's their first language, and it may be their only language, as it is in my case, then you're implying that Asian people should not be able to speak English. I think this happens more often to Asians than any other racial group in North America. This is a backhanded compliment, and it's possible that it may be intended as a proper, not backhanded compliment, and the person is just struggling because of their racial bias. Basically, the statement is only malicious if there was malicious intent. Now let's say that you tell someone you are stupid, or you look ugly. Like, these are insults. These are mean to say regardless of a person's mind or body. Now back to the very first example. If you approach a serious discussion by mocking people, you are being an asshole. And if your entire approach to the topic is that you're going to mock people, then your opinions are mean. For a fandom that worships the idea of positivity, even if it means compromising other important aspects of community building, some furries are really set on defending and spreading malice. And that is why people can't use Hanlon's razor correctly. You cannot mistake stupidity for malice if you don't even know what malice is. Believe me, as a trans person of color, I know what malice is. On that note, I would like to point out that "don't be an asshole" also applies to helicopter jokes. Saying a helicopter joke years ago, when trans people were seen as even less human than they are now, does not excuse you from being an asshole. It's literally a joke that makes fun of people. My takeaway from this video is don't be an asshole. And I don't mean be a saint. I'm not expecting you to be a perfect human being. This isn't about policing people's tones. My point is that if you, unprovoked, enter a conversation by being an asshole, then you are the aggressor, not the quote-unquote angry racialized minorities trying to explain why racism is bad. I am probably releasing this video on March 27th, which is my birthday. I hope it turns out better than the past few days have been. Thank you everyone for your support. Let's hope we all have a better week. Bye.